Hey, Justin, thanks so much for being here on the show. I'm looking forward to this conversation with you today. And I always love to have people on the show who worked in the community banks and then have made the transition to the dark side and have come to work in the fintech space. And I think you fall squarely in that scenario.
Well, thanks for having me, Roland. I wouldn't say I went fully to the dark side. I still do serve community banks, but also have the privilege of working with a lot of fintechs and founders.
That's awesome, and I'm sure is a super fun role. So, we'll unpack a little bit about where you came from before, where you're at now, which is ICBA. But I think it's so cool that you earned your stripes as a leader in a community institution. Could you just talk us through, what your role was like before?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I just recently joined ICBA here about 3 months ago. Prior to that, I spent a little over a decade inside community banks. So most of my career was spent at a community bank in the Midwest that was a little over 800 million in assets. There, I had the privilege of really holding quite a few different roles. So starting, quite honestly, as a personal banker, so opening accounts on the teller line, like learning the business from the ground up. Pretty quickly, though, I started doing a lot of the data analytics, business analytics, and that kind of naturally dovetailed into ultimately leading all digital strategy. So I spent the bulk of my career as our chief digital officer, meaning I really oversaw all digital delivery and support, including partnerships, integrations, negotiations, all those things. I also had the privilege of overseeing our business analytics team and our marketing team too. So, those kind of three pillars really allowed me to craft the digital delivery that we did.
Awesome. I love hearing those kind of classic started at the teller line, worked your way up type of backgrounds, because you really get to see the way the sausage is made across the organization.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so important. I mean, just again, understanding the business from the very ground level, essentially.
Yeah, I think there's value in leaders coming in from, let's say, telecom or it's biotech. I'm just making up industries, but outsiders coming in and then looking at the way that we do things, which, for somebody like you, and I actually had kind of a similar background to you in starting more operational and then, making my way up. You really just kind of grow up seeing the way things are done, which is great for understanding things at an intimate level, but can also be a hindrance when you're trying to think outside of the box and you're trying to maybe take it to basic principles on how the institution operates. Can be kind of hard when your lens has been defined by, being in it for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a healthy medium there. Like it's good to, again, understand how things are done currently. You can't get so entrenched in that to think that, well, that's the only way to do things. There's lots of other ways to execute on the strategic initiatives and operational elements of the bank.
One thing I've always thought when I hear digital transformation is, well, first of all, it's such a buzzword. It's been around for 20 years now, and there's no end in sight to transformation, right? It's an ongoing exercise. What would you say is the hardest part of digital transformation that, people who weren't in the role that you were in at the institution just don't understand?
Yeah, I think that I totally agree that it's kind of a buzzword, whether it's digital transformation or innovation. Like, I want to demystify those things. These things don't have to be complex or mystical. For me, in my experience, definitely the hardest part is not the technology. It's the culture and alignment to, the goals. So building a culture of curiosity, building a culture that's comfortable experimenting a little bit with technology and more, modern or unique business approaches, that takes time. You can't just say we're going to be a culture of curiosity and digital transformation. Like, that doesn't work, right? You have to get people to buy into it. You have to kind of lead with those same principles. And it takes time and effort.
So how do you build that trust to then go and explore and try things and see, throw it against the wall and see if it sticks?
Yeah, it's I would say it's very much a crawl, walk, run approach, right? So as I kind of came into that role at the institution I was at, I did not start with ginormous, huge projects, right? I didn't come in and saying, you know what, we're going to an AI native blockchain digital banking system. Like, no, you start with the small, tangible, quick ROI type things. And you get your hands dirty. You get down in the trenches, you do the work, right? You don't just dictate to a team, hey, build this, and that's what we need to do. Like, you show up and you do it yourself too. So in my experience, one of the first things we did in our digital transformation journey was do some very lightweight marketing automation, right? Like, it was a low risk, easy win is what I'd say, right? We knew we wanted to communicate with our clients and our customers. We weren't necessarily executing on that in a automated or repeatable fashion, right? And so you just take some simple concepts and do some simple outreach, right? With that, you can start seeing some quick wins, right? And then you continue to leverage that, right?
And when you say you reach out, are you talking about to like the vendor ecosystem, like you're reaching out to fintech,
Oh,
marketing tech players, or?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking more about when I spent time in the bank, reaching out to our clients, right?
Oh,
So
got it.
again, you just started a relationship with us. Well, there's things we want to educate you about. And, it doesn't even have to be salesy, right? It's telling you who we are, what are our values, right? Making sure that you were able to sign into online banking successfully and, checking in to make sure you're having a great experience, right? Things that are not just pushing product right off the bat or anything like that. Again, these are things that contribute to the overall customer experience are hard to deliver on if it's just an individual banker doing it differently each time, right? You need systems in place to do these things. And there's just one example of like a really
Sure.
easy initial use case.
It's like there's so many little things that you need to be doing that contribute to that digital transformation narrative. That's one of them. It's interesting what you said also actually dovetails with one thing that one of our other guests, Harai Khalsa, mentioned. One thing that every institution should make sure that they're nailing is ensuring that every new customer, walks out the proverbial branch door, right? A lot of these accounts are being opened online, but that people know really well how to get into online banking and get set up there is just a great way to reduce abandonment and inactive accounts, so on and so forth. So I think that makes sense. Where do you see most of these digital transformation initiatives stall out?
They stall out if the kind of goals and objectives are not clear in the beginning. So if an institution just kind of chases a shiny object, right? Maybe they saw a demo from a vendor and they're like, wow, this is so cool. We want to do X, whatever that is. And they say, okay, we got to do it, right? And they implement it. Well, then what, right? They weren't approaching that with a kind of an end state in mind, right? Instead, I think that a more appropriate approach is, well, you as the bank, right? You define, well, what is the problem we're trying to solve or the experience we're trying to improve, right? And then you go and find a vendor to implement and solve that problem, right? I think another thing that can cause things to stall out is quite honestly making decisions in a silo, right? So if you have again, whether it's digital transformation or innovation, whatever you brand it as or call it, if you have that happening in a silo and you haven't involved the other stakeholders, you run the risk of that initiative stalling out once it goes live, right? So maybe you're rolling out a new lending system, right? Loan LOS or something. Well, if you haven't engaged the key stakeholders throughout the entire kind of journey of that project, and instead you say, nope, we're going with, again, I'm not going to say a specific vendor, but some modern vendor. And then you're like, okay, we're live, let's do it. It's just really hard to get by and kind of post the decision being made. So
Change
I'd say,
management. Like people are
yeah,
gonna, if they're not involved in the beginning, and I've seen this happen before, where they are trying to use the new solution, the thing that's gonna drive the transformation in the old way. And that obviously doesn't work.
yeah, it just degrades the whole experience then, right? And then 6 months after implementation, you're sitting there scratching your head thinking, well, did we really solve the problem after all?
No, I think that, and that makes sense. I would imagine a lot of leaders struggle with, okay, if I open up the aperture on, who's going to be involved in kind of charting a new course for us from a transformation perspective, it's going to be death by committee, and we're not going to actually get anything done. So there's got to be a balance there between involving the right stakeholders and getting it over the finish line.
Yeah, I mean, I think you point out a really relevant thing here. If you involve, small teams generally perform better, right, in implementing some of these changes. So, yeah, certainly you don't want the entire bank involved in some minor change. And so I think some of that just comes with time spent in an organization, right? Understanding the culture of the organization, understanding how decisions are made, and understanding who are the appropriate people to pull in and who can be your champion. Sometimes there's, departments where maybe you have like an internal champion in that department and you don't need to involve everyone, but you need to involve the folks they'll listen to. Yeah.
Hoping you can share some insight from a culture perspective. How does a chief digital officer synergize with a CIO and a CTO? Like
Yeah.
where does everyone's kind of kingdom begin and end, if you will, in terms of like where they have say in the organization and what how they're contributing to these types of endeavors?
Yeah, I think that in my case, I was really filling a CTO type role with that title, right? So we had a traditional CIO. We did not have a CTO role. That was kind of me, more or less.
Got it.
Um, in that setup, I was bringing more of you know, what do we need to do to stay competitive? How can we improve customer experience? How can we improve efficiency? How can we improve, accuracy, internal client experience? Those were my objectives, right? I partnered very closely with our CEO, I'm sorry, CIO, uh, for guidance from them on, how can we do this with data security in mind? How can we do this under the necessary like vendor management and regulatory framework. And so certainly I think that's a nice uh, balance of powers, if you will, right? Kind of the yin and the yang. In my ideal world, I would be bringing things that would make him or make them slightly uncomfortable, and they would be pushing back on things that I think
Yeah.
should be easy, right? And
Okay.
so through that and just through mutual respect, right? Like I would never uh, push something through that the CIO wasn't on board with. Right now, sometimes it took
Okay.
some convincing, right? And I do think too, developing the business case is super important, right? Explaining why you need, again, maybe a certain piece of technology, or maybe you need to take a different approach to something. You need to be able to clearly define the business case, right, and the ROI.
And I guess that ties into talking to the team, talking to stakeholders, getting to, the bottom of what the business issues are and then getting their buy-in and collaborating on these. That's cool. I think that makes sense. And I think it was probably wise of your team to not have a CTO, a CDO, and a CIO. It feels redundant and would probably give rise to some conflict. So basically, you had a good working relationship with the CIO, kind of the visionary, if you will, and the CIO basically keeps you from getting in trouble.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Yeah,
again, there's some natural and intentional friction in that relationship. And I think that's a good thing, right? It's great to disagree with people you work with sometimes, right? As long as you can do it respectfully.
absolutely.
And we all wanted the same thing, right? We wanted the bank to succeed. We wanted to provide great experiences for our clients. We were bought into the mission, I guess is what I'd say. And so it's just, how do you get there?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a partnership. And what do they say about partnerships? If you don't argue a little bit, then you don't need each other. So
Hmm.
that's cool. I get that. Okay, so Justin, let me draw you out on automation. This is obviously a huge piece. It ties into agentic AI. It ties in, so much of the current narrative around digital transformation. Walk me through your thoughts on where should community institutions start with automation?
Well, yeah, thank you. I community banks should start with the simple things, right? Automate the things that a human shouldn't be doing, right? So examples that come to my mind would be things like booking an account to your core, right? That shouldn't take manually typing into the computer,
Right.
or moving documentation into your cold storage system, right? Those are things that for many banks, they likely have the necessary software and technology already to automate, right, to some degree. Um, Sometimes they just haven't yet, right? And that's, maybe that's just how new products have rolled out. There's lots of reasons for that. But if you automate those kind of simple tier one things, it allows you to build a foundation to automate the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I think even more importantly is it frees up the humans, right? It allows the humans to work on much higher impact items. I don't know too many folks that just thrive on manual data entry, right? Like There may be out there. I know I'm not one of them.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't
meet
know
many
any.
folks like that, right? So get rid of it, right? Let the systems do what systems are good at. Free up the people to do high impact, high gain functions.
I love that. No, I think that makes sense. So, Justin, let's talk a little bit about data. I know that this is something you've experimented with and had some success with during your time at the community institution. And data, I keep hearing, is critical. It's the new, it's the new oil. Where do you see data showing up within the community banks today, and how is it being used or underused?
Yeah, I always used to say that data is kind of the largest asset a bank has, which is not on the balance sheet, right? So basically
I
every
like that.
community bank is sitting on a tremendous amount of information, data, right? And the reality is I've never talked to a bank that has the staffing or knowledge or expertise to use all of it to the effectively, right? And you shouldn't have to, right? I mean, these are complex systems, some of these. I think when it comes to data, you should focus first on, I mean, what is absolutely required? Like, okay, regulatory and financial reporting type things. Most banks have that figured out, right? You're doing your KYC, you're accurately booking interest, you're accurately posting transactions. I mean, these are the kind of table stakes, right? As you look to say, well, what else can I do with data, right? I always like to focus on things that are actionable and that drive revenue, either directly or indirectly, right? And so a couple, I guess, really easy examples or base examples would be, okay, any data that prevents fraud, yeah, you should look at that, right? Now, you don't have to get analysis paralysis. You don't have to build the next model that's going to eliminate all fraud, but there are things you can do with data to mitigate fraud, right? One example that I think, many banks would do is, okay, well, look at the logs and sign-in activity that's happening in your digital banking experience, right? And look for obviously suspicious activity, right? Brand new
Hmm.
devices accessing through a VPN and then immediately trying to do, extreme volumes of money movement, right? Okay, there's a data point that you can look at and you can action. You can say, okay, I'm going to partner with my digital banking provider or internal teams and say, when a new device accesses online banking, let's review it or let's minimize lower their limits on what they can transfer or, whatever that looks like. One other kind of simple or actionable piece of data would be, and something I spend a lot of time is look at your card portfolios, right? Your debit and credit card portfolios, and
Hmm.
don't get buried in the weeds. Don't try to look at every single data point and predict when somebody's going to buy, whatever. But you can say, well, who's stopped using their card and why? And can I
Hmm.
either message appropriately or re-engage them to start using it, right? Like those are the types of things that banks should be doing is the simple base level things. Now, once you accomplish that, absolutely start iterating on your models, start iterating on how you're using data. But I think sometimes it's easy to get just analysis paralysis, right? You sit there and you say, oh my gosh, I could perfectly predict everything, right? Because I know my entire customer relationship based on data. Well, just start with the simple stuff. Keep it simple. I don't know. Maybe I'm too basic here, but you don't need a data scientist, I guess is what I'm saying, right? You can use
Okay.
like very basic um, triggers and insights to really drive next best action, or at least drive messaging or drive certain automations.
Okay. No, I there's a trend here, and it's basically to keep things simple. And I love
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
that mantra. Honestly, I feel like we have 4 kids, we have a big family, and just keeping it simple with our crew keeps everybody happier.
Yeah, I had in
You
my
know?
notes here, I said, this, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say stupid, but, here we are.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that makes sense. Keeping things simple within the community institution realm, but even where you came from, you guys were sub a billion. There really aren't data scientists who are trying to play in that job market, right? Like you really don't have a deep bench of people generally who can help you do all sorts of cool and fun, sexy stuff with data. And you're really heavily leaning on the fintech ecosystem that you've built for yourself and your partners and your in-house team. And so I think keeping things simple allows you to, build and compile skill set when it comes to, in this case, data.
hmm And I'll just if I could add on to that, while yeah, most sub 1 billion institutions aren't going to have some you know, PhD data scientist type person. They probably have somebody that's hungry to learn, hungry to grow, and kind of understands data, right? Like
Yeah.
that probably exists somewhere in those four walls or within the institution. And so I do think it's super important to create internal opportunities for folks that are curious and driven. Like let them explore safely, right? I'm not saying
Hmm.
just open up everything and say, have
Sure.
at it, but there are safe and measurable ways that you can like build up internal team members, give them exposure to things, and you might be surprised at what they deliver.
Did you, in your career, which again is a pretty cool work your way from the ground up type of story, did you have people along the way who mentored you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, both within the organization and outside of the organization, I had great mentors, and I've been lucky to have that. And so, if you're somebody that's coming up in the banking or financial institution space, I would really encourage you to just ask again, just be contagiously curious internally, right? Ask people, well, why do we do things this way? Will you show me what a day in the life of you looks like, right? And um, I've found that people are generally pretty open to being a mentor, right? And
Yeah,
I still have
it's kind of
mentors,
an
right?
honor.
Yeah, exactly. Most people would be excited if you ask them, hey, tell me what you know.
So, Justin, you obviously earned your stripes in the community banking space. Now you've made the transition to working with the ICBA. So you went from bank operator to ecosystem builder. Why don't you give us a little on what the ICBA is?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So the ICBA, or Independent Community Bankers of America, we're an organization that represents a large number of community banks within the United States. I had the opportunity when I was a banker to interact with this organization really from the banker's lens, right? So what that looked like for me was I actually served on the selection committee for the accelerator for a couple of years. And so at the time, as a banker, that gave me, exposure to getting to see a lot of fintechs, getting to have a vote on whether or not they made it into the accelerator program, and really opened my eyes to a much wider audience of fintechs and bank tech solutions that I had never come across outside of this.
And so now you're managing the ICBA Fintech Accelerator. What is that? Can you break it down
Yeah,
for
well,
us?
yeah, good question. So it's the ICBA ThinkTECH Accelerator. This is an accelerator program that's laser focused on bringing relevant bank technology solutions to community banks. You know, we serve our member banks, period, right? That's why we exist. We exist to help them, right? Find technology, help with innovation, help with other pillars too, right? So the ICBA has a big voice in advocacy for community bank issues, has a big role to play in education in the community banking space. And then the area I have the privilege of working in is really in the innovation area, right? So that can be technology, that can be helping with innovative culture, all sorts of things. The accelerator it's again geared towards what I would call growth stage companies, right? So generally we like to see companies that likely have at least a handful of bank clients. They certainly have a live product or products out in the marketplace, but maybe they're looking for that next step in their journey, right? And so what we do in the accelerator program for the fintechs or bank tech companies is a few things. Number one, we provide, I would call it education, right? So there's in-person opportunities to speak with bankers, speak with core providers, speak with regulators. We bring in all sorts of subject matter experts, right? Whether that's, how do you approach VC folks? How do you build culture? Sales strategies. But they're doing bank visits. So those are structured
And do you
visits.
guys facilitate those?
Yes, we do. So
Oh, wow.
we facilitate really two flavors of bank visits, right? So we offer group bank visits where banks can just sign up and join to kind of see who's coming through the accelerator. But then what's sometimes even more impactful is what we would call one-on-one bank visits. And these are structured calls virtually with the bank. Generally, it's a whole team of people at the bank, and they get to spend 3.5 hours with us and see all six of the companies that come through the accelerator. And we keep it very scheduled, right? So essentially, a fintech gets 15 to 20 minutes to present their solution, but then almost the most important part is there's 10 minutes at the end for feedback, right? So this is not a sales environment. The reality is a banker could sit in their office and their phone and email will ring all day with people trying to sell them stuff, right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
we know that exists.
Oh yeah.
What this is all about is about, product market fit and kind of the opportunity to engage with your potential clients, right? So um, we view it as very collaborative, I guess is what I'm getting at here, right? For the banks, they get exposure to fintech solutions that are serious, that have kind of gone through some level of education. They've really dedicated themselves to serving the community bank market. And then for the fintechs and the founders, they get the opportunity to talk to a lot of banks, right? Over the past 10 weeks, the fintechs in our program spoke with over 200 bankers to give you an idea of the scale here,
Wow.
right? That's really hard for them to do if they're just, dialing for dollars
I
and hitting
mean,
the email and
that's an
LinkedIn messages.
unbelievable distribution framework for a fintech to plug into. It's like a dream. It's
It,
like a dream come true, basically.
Absolutely. And I'll share it's a competitive process here, right? We get a lot of applications. And what I think is really special about our accelerator is that really the people making the decisions on who gets in is a team of bankers, right? So we have a structure we follow, right? We take applications, we do kind of an initial scrub through those applications
Hmm.
for, relevancy and just basic things. But then the real value is we have a team of about 20 or so bankers that, they don't work for the ICBA. They're bankers out there living their daily life, doing their work in their community banks. But then they get to see all these companies that are finalists, let's call it, and then they get a vote on who makes it in. And why that's so important is because we are committed to bringing relevant and meaningful solutions to banks. Again, we're not a sales arm for these fintechs. Very clear from the beginning. We're not here to sell your product. What we are here to do is to connect you with knowledgeable, dedicated community bankers that are at least interested in how do I modernize? How do I keep meeting my clients' expectations? How do I, approach technology, right?
Hmm.
And then we just match those folks up, kind of help
I
guide the
love that.
conversation.
I love that. I think that's so cool. It's such the idea of what you guys do. It's kind of an abstract concept of nurturing these fintechs and then finding bankers who are interested in taking part and presenting to them the option of helping to kind of cultivate the industry. I think that's very cool. I mean, any fintech would be lucky to be a part of what you guys are doing. How do you vet them?
Yeah, so there's, again, we have a standardized application process, and I should say applications for our 11th cohort are open right now. So
Okay.
we are currently accepting applications for our cohort that
When
starts.
does that close?
Applications close March 31st.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, well, let's get those applications in. But so once an application's submitted, there's some what I would call initial vetting, and this is just basic, like, okay,
Hmm.
is this a real company? Did you submit what we asked you to submit? Right, those types of things. We also then look for. I mean, while we accept solutions, any solution that serves community banks, there are certain themes that are really important for us, right? And so in 2026, really, there's 5 kind of thematic areas that we are really focused on. And this is based on feedback from bankers, right? We are kind of aggregating the voice of all sorts of bankers that we talk to say, hey, these are what we're focused on. And those 5 areas are AI, right? That has to be there. Fraud, data, payments and stablecoin, and then customer experience, right? And so as you can see, that's a pretty broad set of themes,
Sure.
right? I mean, almost every solution anymore has some element of AI today, it seems. So anyway, so we kind of do an initial scrub, an initial review, and then where I would say where the magic happens is we then get those solutions that kind of make it through that initial cut in front of our selection committee. And again, these are real live bankers, right,
Hmm.
representing community banks across the nation. Um, and that's where really, again, the magic happens, right? These bankers dedicate their time to this cause essentially, and they provide very direct feedback. We aggregate that feedback in a structured way. Think about it as like a scoring matrix essentially. And that's really how we end up with the finalists, right? The folks
Okay.
that make it in. Now, certainly there's also the there's the due diligence side of it too, the legal, the background checks, all those
Sure.
things, which obviously our team handles, and there's certain criteria there. But at the end of the day, the bankers are really driving um, much of the decision here.
Okay, got it. And so what would you say makes a fintech bank ready?
Yeah, that's a good call out. So I think a few things. Attitude is important. If they come at this with a willingness to learn, a willingness to listen, a willingness to, you know, just make the most out of the opportunity to talk to so many folks, that goes a long way. Now, when we talk about being bank ready, right, we do expect that they understand like the traditional kind of community bank tech stack. Selling into community banks or building solutions for community banks is a lot different than building solutions for a software company or for neobank or for, a different industry, right?
Hmm.
And so I think a baseline understanding of, hey, yeah, they're going to have a core, right? It's probably going to be from, a handful of these large providers. They're going to be they're regulated, right? And there's certain regulatory requirements. Um, you know, those are things that are important. We do then look for, again, the kind of vendor due diligence type things too, right? So if they're handling PII, right, like are you at a point where you have the documentation to support that you're doing that correctly, right? Do you have your SOC 2 type 2? Do you have your insurance certs? Do you have your access controls? And, I could go through the list. I do have to be very clear, we are not stating that these are 100% vetted and approved or anything like that, but we are doing a initial review of, hey, do you have and understand these things, right? And
Hmm.
so what that
Hmm.
plays out as is if you're a smart person that has an idea and wants to build a solution, that's great. We support you. We want you to succeed in the community banking space, but you need a little more than just an idea to get into the accelerator, right? You need some adoption, some product, some like
Okay.
true understanding, right? And so there's other ways we can work with those folks, and we want to support the whole ecosystem where appropriate. But there's definitely you need to fit kind of what it is we're looking for. Same if you're the
Sure.
other way. If you have, 500 financial institutions live on your product and you have a team of 300 people and you're, a Series C, you're probably maybe a little too mature for the program.
Okay,
Um,
got it.
yeah.
So, like, you should at least have, I don't know, Figma design. You need to have maybe already be talking to some institutions. You need to have a story on your financing and what your runway looks like in order to be taken seriously.
Yeah, and I'd say you probably need even a little more than a Figma design generally, right? Like you need a product, right, that's out there being used.
Okay.
Um, there are, and why that's important, I do want to kind of circle back to that. That is important because again, you have to think about what is our role in this ecosystem, right? And our role is to serve our member banks, right? And provide them, access to technologies that are going to be relevant, that are going to stick around, that are going to be, that they're going to implement and they're going to get good results from. Right
Right.
now, obviously, we don't guarantee results, right? That's still, there's still a contractual process between the fintech and the bank if they choose to partner. But we don't want to just sell dreams, right? We want to sell like real, tangible,
Yeah, this is
meaningful.
coming very soon or this is available now.
Right. And what we generally see is that throughout the program, right, we'll have a company enter the program, find that there's relevancy. And we see that product they offer get tweaked and change a little bit, right? And the hope is that it's, changing in a way that is just more and more relevant for community banks.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Okay. Awesome. No, this is great. This is great clarity. And anybody who's trying to get something going, this is a great avenue to go down to try to get the ball rolling because it's hard. Oh my gosh, it's so hard to be, get in front of people. I mean, that's got to be the hardest piece of this because the buyers in the banking fintech ecosystem are getting blown away in every single channel with
Yeah.
advertisements and vaporware and AI. So let me ask you this. If I'm a founder right now, what are some mistakes I'm probably making as I'm trying to get in front of bankers?
Interesting. So if I'm a founder, what are some mistakes I'm making? trying to get in front of bankers.
Like
Um,
is email a dead channel, do you think? And is it just all you gotta get in person or
um, I wouldn't say email's dead. It's challenging, right? Like all these channels are challenging. I would say that if you're a fintech founder and you're wanting to get in front of banks, you really need to understand the problem you are solving, right? Sometimes it's not just about having the cleanest UI or having the fastest decision or the cheapest pricing, right? Like you have to really understand what problem you are solving for a community bank. And to do that, you have to spend a lot of time talking with bankers, right? Somehow you have to understand what are they living day to day? What are they getting challenged on? Where could they use efficiency improvements? I would also say founders should approach these relationships as partnerships, right? So I had um, someone that's just incredibly intelligent and well versed in this industry one time explained to me. He's like, "Hey, vendors, right? Well, we're not a vending machine, right? You don't want to stick a quarter in and get a solution. Like you want a partnership, kind of making the vending
right?
machine analogy, if you will. And I think that understanding a couple things. Number one, yeah, approach things as a partnership. Add some value to the banker's life somehow, even if that's not that you get a sale right away. Be a connector in the ecosystem. Like this is a small world,
Oh my
and
god.
the
So
reality is that everyone knows everybody. When I was in the buyer's chair, let's say, when I worked inside a financial institution, my email would blow up, my LinkedIn would blow up, my phone would blow up. Everybody wanted to sell me stuff, right? And yeah, I did not carefully review everything, every message I got to see, well, should I buy this AI solution? What I did do though is if I had a problem I was trying to solve, I did call my peers in the industry and say, hey, what are you guys doing about fraud monitoring? Who are you working with? What's working well? I I did do that. And so every connection you have with a banker, like just maximize it, right? Be a good person, be reasonable, keep it simple, right? Back to the theme here. Like just
yeah.
follow the golden rule.
You,
I don't
you
know if
know,
that's too
going
yeah.
no, I think that makes sense. And you're making me think about kind of what we spoke about earlier, which is, and what you're saying now, which is you're calling your peers, you're talking to like, which kind of pre qualifies whoever they're going to tell you about because they know about them. Let me ask you about partnerships. Like, are we in a space now where if you are an up and coming fintech, you should almost be looking for that force multiplier of a partnership? Somebody that's interested in reselling, white labeling, referring what you do?
I think this is going to be highly dependent on what it is you're selling or what your solution does. I do think that that's one very valid distribution strategy, right? It's not going to work for everybody. And it's something that in the community bank space, there's more opportunities than ever with that, right? When you look at things like digital banking marketplaces, right? With kind of, I guess I'd say plug and play integrations, right? Or you look at other kind of ecosystem channels or players, if you will. There are ways to get distribution that are not, send 1,000 cold emails and hope for the best, right? Now, whether or not you should enter into an official reseller partnership, I mean, it's hard to answer that question like in broad strokes, right? That's
Sure.
very specific to each solution.
That's fair, and it's as somebody who worked in a partnership capacity, that is a challenging thing to stand up and manage, and is probably gets a lot of fintechs over their skis pretty quickly. Let me
And
yeah, go
if I
ahead.
could just add real quickly on that, like choose your partners carefully. Just because somebody has what they might state as mass distribution or, oh, I'll get you in front of 500 banks, 1,000 banks. Just consider your options. Like be
Sure.
conscientious that once you enter into those relationships, you sometimes lose control of what it is you're selling to some degree. And if you can't control the product, sometimes the results aren't what you
Mm,
want.
totally fair. Yeah, I think it's probably good to temper your expectations when you hear claims about how connected somebody is and their willingness to get you in front of X number of prospective buyers because it's kind of like the fishing story, right? The fish is,
Oh
you
yeah.
know,
Oh yeah.
oh yeah, exactly. And you can get you Jamie Dimon on the phone, and so let's bring it home here with a little conversation on AI. I mean, what's there to say about AI? It is absolutely everywhere. It is dominating. It's like the one constant in the news cycle, I feel like right now, maybe even outpacing Trump, which is hard to do. Where do you see this impacting community institutions over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. So, this one's a little tough, particularly as you look at the 3 to 5 year time horizon. If you asked me 2.5, 3 years ago where AI would be, it's like I don't think I would have been able to predict where we are even today. What I do think is going to happen, and this is, I'd say, my personal opinion, right? And I don't have a crystal ball. I think a few things we're seeing already. Number one, I think that the bank technology providers are seeing agentic AI having just tremendous real world impacts, right? How they build engineering teams, how quickly they can develop new iterations on their product, right? Like, I think that's in general a good thing, right? I can iterate quicker, I can deploy quicker, I can do so at, a lower cost potentially. I think those are good things. I do think that banks should be open to experimenting responsibly with AI, right? And so, you know, this ties back to some of all the things we talked about before, like your data, right? Like, okay, if you want to use AI, well, your data's got to be in order to do that effectively, right? So I think banks should be experimenting. They should be doing so responsibly, right? They should be doing so with, you know, specific use cases in mind, right? This is not just, hey, turn on Copilot and just open it up to everything and let's go,
Sure.
right? Like, yeah, you need some experimentation. So I think that, again, service providers will be able to iterate faster. They'll probably be able to drive costs lower, would be my estimation, right? And folks should be able to deploy solutions faster. All this to say, though, is I actually tend to believe that community banks in particular are uniquely well positioned for this kind of AI wave. And here's why. I think that AI will allow banks to grow and scale without adding headcount as rapidly, right? Like,
Hmm.
basically the same number of employees will be able to do, more work. That's a positive. However, I also think that you are going to see essentially AI only banks out there, right? Whether those are
Ooh,
neobanks or whoever, right? You're going to
it's kind of
see,
scary.
yeah, I mean, I say AI only, there'll probably be a person or two, right? And I think what's unique about community banks is we have a few things that, as an industry, that, sometimes the larger players or the online only banks struggle with, right? Like, we have trust, we have real relationships, and we have like a community presence, right? And
Right.
those are real meaningful things. And so I tend to think that there will actually become a point where there's a premium on like actual relationships, right?
Hmm.
And so certainly, yeah, use AI to make things more efficient. Use AI to deliver exceptional customer experience, right? Use AI to improve fraud mitigation, right? And improve, all of that. That's good, right? But I'm a little bit bearish on AI ever fully replacing a human relationship, right? Like,
I agree.
I think that there is something here. There's a reason you and I are talking here on a video, right? I could just have my AI agent talk to your AI agent and share notes, right? Like,
Sure.
okay, well, that's not, I don't, nobody wants to watch
Yeah.
that,
No,
right?
I'm
So,
not. I don't want to
um,
do that. I don't like that
no,
future.
no,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think that as people kind of, people are nervous and anxious about their financial lives, right? Like, it
Sure.
is confusing, right? And sure, you can plug it into a PFM solution that's AI enabled and it can spit out, oh, well, Johnny, you should save more money. Don't buy a cup of coffee. Don't buy your avocado toast, like whatever. There is a place for real relationships with people, right? And I think that
Sure.
community banks like just are in the right place at the right time for that. So I would say
Okay.
AI is a partner. AI is a enabler. It's a force multiplier, but it just allows us to do more of what we're already doing great, and that's building relationships, being a trusted financial partner and impacting our communities.
Love it. All right, man. We're at the end here. Let me run you through some rapid fire questions. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. Number one, community bank CEOs. What should these guys be paying attention to right now?
Listen to your customers. Your customers are broadcasting their preferences with how they interact with you. Look at your transactional activity, right? Look at how your customers are interacting. talk to your customers, right? There's a qualitative and quantitative side of this, and both are important.
Okay.
The other one I would say, if I can, is consider your culture, right? Technology is easy. There's always somebody that will build technology. Culture is hard, and it takes like a leader to build a culture that can excel.
Totally agree. And if you want people thinking creatively, they need to feel safe to do so. And that's, I think, the kind of main ingredient of innovation.
Yeah.
Okay. FinTech founders, what should they be preparing for right now?
I would say, is your solution solving a real problem? Have you talked to a bunch of bankers about what that problem is, and have you vetted that it's actually a problem, right? Sometimes we see folks that may think they're solving a problem only to realize like, well, there's intentional friction in a process, right? There's a reason for the friction, those types of things. The other thing, if I'm a vendor, that I'd be really paying attention to is, what's my moat, right? Like AI it's making it more challenging to build a solution that has a moat around it. You know what I'm saying? I tend to think the best way to do that is understand the business of banking. Like, I just can't overstate that, right? Don't just be the greatest software developer or greatest engineer. Like, understand banks and then build software for them.
I love the notion to talk to them and get your idea in front of them. You know, I recently had Elizabeth McCluskey, who runs a venture fund at TrueStage, and she was talking about how talking to your buyers is so important, because these ideas in the beginning, early stages, almost always change quite a bit before it's generally available. And so getting that feedback early and establishing those relationships with those bankers, I think, is super important.
Absolutely.
Well, Justin, this has been great. Really appreciate you coming on. Where can people follow what is going on with the ICBA? And is there anything coming up with the ICBA that you want to mention?
Absolutely. So www.icba.org, that will have all the information on it. You can find the innovation area on the site and all of our innovation programming. As I mentioned before, we are currently accepting applications for our 11th cohort of this accelerator, which kicks off in middle of May. So if you are a founder or know a great founder that's serving the community bank space, please submit an application. Feel free to reach out to me directly as well. Find me on LinkedIn. Find me, my email's listed on the ICBA website. The last thing I'll mention is we do, outside of the accelerator, we have all sorts of programming that we do for community banks. So most notably, we have an innovation workshop coming up in the middle of April. And in that innovation workshop, we'll be just helping provide sources and education around, well, how do we build a culture of innovation? What are we've spent a lot of time talking about the why should banks innovate. Now it's time to tackle the what and how are we going to innovate? What do I need to be doing? So it's a 2-day session virtually, where we'll bring in a bunch of experts, a bunch of other bankers, and it's just like collaborative and productive, quite honestly.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here, Justin.
Thank you, Roland. It's been a pleasure.
See you, buddy.
See ya.
Hey, thanks for being here. If you or someone else you know would like to explore coming on the show, fill out a contact form at propagatefintech.com, and we can explore some content ideas with you. Also, we are an end-to-end marketing and PR firm only supporting the bank industry. So if you would like to explore going deeper with Propagate, again, feel free to reach out to us and we can explore whatever that you are working on. We'll see you on the next one.